Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome back for this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open, the floor, as they would say, is yours. What do you guys want to talk about? That is what we are here to discuss today on Open Mic. And there's two different ways to get a comment or a question on Open Mic. The first way is anytime 24/7, like it can be 3 o'clock in the morning. If an idea for a question hits you, you can go to our tip link anytime at streamelements.com/John Campea/tip. The link is also down below. You can find it there and you can send those in, and then we gather them up and we use them here on Open Mic. Or if you're watching live right now, and you got to be watching live, and an idea hits you, you can go ahead and use the super chat feature. The super chats are currently open and you can send them in that way. And as long as your comment or question is appropriate to be used on our show, we'll address it here on Open Mic. And by the way, Logan Vaughn just became one of our channel members. Thank you, Logan, for becoming a channel member. Good to have you here. And hello to everybody who's here watching live. Good to have you guys here. So what we're going to do here basically is, like I said, it's a relaxed, laid back, casual movie conversation of our favorite stuff in the world. But this is what we're going to do. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about this Godzilla versus Kong success. And we're going to go ahead and take your questions. So let me start with Godzilla versus Kong. And I'm going to warn you, because listen, you may disagree, but that's fine. It's my show, so I get to set the rules, I guess. There is nothing to spoil in Godzilla versus Kong. You know what you're getting with Godzilla versus Kong, okay? There's really nothing to spoil. Like, wait a minute, Godzilla is Kong's father? What? No, there's nothing like that. So I am going to mention a couple of details from the movie here, but believe me, I'm not going to spell the whole thing out, but just to let you guys know. So Godzilla versus Kong comes out. An incredibly dumb movie, no doubt. It has 59% on Rotten Tomatoes for a good reason. A lot of good movie making things are not present in Godzilla versus Kong, or Godzilla X Kong, I should say. It is dumb in very many ways. There's a lot of things to roll your eyes out, and I have no issue and no problem with anybody who does not like this movie, because I get it. There's a lot of things in this movie to not like. You know, if story matters to you, if good character development matters to you, if strong dialogue matters to you, then I have no problem with you going, you know what, I didn't like that movie. Because I'm just going to go, yeah, I can see why. I could totally see why you didn't like Godzilla versus Kong. That being said, I had a ball with it. I had an absolute ball with it. You know, sometimes you can do things wrong in a movie, even a lot of things wrong. But if you do certain other things really, really well, it can overcome that for some people, and it did that for me. The fun stuff in Godzilla versus Kong was so fun that it allowed me to have a really good time watching it, regardless of the fact, or even despite the fact, that there are some very, very, very weak things about that movie. There are some very, very weak things about that movie, but there are some very, very strong things about the movie as well. So I had a good time with it. You know what my favorite parts of the movie was? And this makes the Godzilla fans cry. When King Kong knocks Godzilla the fuck out. That's right. Don't get me wrong, I love Godzilla. I love Godzilla. I do. I think Godzilla's great. But when Kong gets Godzilla to the mat, Kong takes full mount, starts raining elbows and punches and fists down. Boom, and the lights go out. Godzilla goes night-night. Sleepy time. Sleepy time for Godzilla. He gets knocked the fuck out. And then King Kong gets up, underestimating though. King Kong underestimates Godzilla, because King Kong gets up and he starts dragging his carcass, because he's dragging his body over to the dimensional rift so he can go down and hopefully team up and fight the threats to come and all that kind of stuff. Yes, but at the same time, he underestimated Godzilla's recovery powers, because then Godzilla gets back up, fights back on, right? All that kind of stuff. But still, I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, like I said, in Godzilla versus Kong, the last movie, they gave the nod to Godzilla more than they gave it to Kong. So in this one, they just even it out a bit. Kong gets a little bit more of the shine in this one. And I had a blast with it. I thought it was super fun. But here's the thing. We talked about this on the John Campea Show earlier today. They projected Godzilla versus Kong to make $50 to $55 million opening weekend, which would have been amazing. That would have been great. It would have been the biggest opening for this monster franchise out of the last 3 films. It would have marked the 4th movie to open to over $45 million in March, which is great for March. March had a great box office month, and the theaters really, really needed it because they're not doing so great right now. And that would have been great. 50 to 55 would have been great. A big win. Some people thought, like Ray thought it could go higher than that. Ray thought it could come in at like maybe 65. I thought that's possible, but I'm going to stick with the 50 to 55. $80 million. Made $80 million. And actually, you know what? I'm going to check to see if the actuals have come out yet. Because 80 million was the weekend forecast there, but the actuals may have come in by now. Oh yeah, the actuals came in and it's still $80 million. Okay, that's fine. So makes $80 million, which makes it the second biggest opening of the year so far, second only to Dune 2, and we're already more than a quarter of the way through the year. And just remarkable. Now the question becomes, how big can this movie be? How big can it get? And I honestly don't know, because like Godzilla versus Kong, well, I'm going to go back to the theater and see it again. I'm going to go back and see it a second time because I had a lot of fun with it. But it's not a movie, I think, that will have a huge appeal. Because like I said, there's going to be a lot of people out there where, guess what? Dialogue matters. There's going to be a lot of people out there where strength of story matters, where development matters. And to a lot of those film fans, Godzilla versus Kong is not going to work for them, and they're not going to run out to go see it. And even though I'm going to go back to see it again, I don't know that there's going to be a ton of people running out to see Godzilla x Kong again. So I don't know that it's, for instance, Dune 2 right now is at $630 million. I don't think Godzilla versus Kong or Godzilla x Kong is going to get that big. Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask you guys, let me put up a poll. Okay. I'm going to put up a poll right now to see what you guys think about this. And the question is going to be, this is for those of you guys who are watching live. The question is going to be, will Godzilla x Kong make as much overall as Dune 2? My guess is no, it won't. And I just put up the poll there in the live chat. For those of you who are watching live, I just put up the poll in the live chat. I don't think it will, but I do think it can get the $500 million mark. I think Godzilla x Kong can get the $500 million mark. And how much did Godzilla versus Kong make? Hold on a second. Versus Kong. I honestly don't know off the top of my head how much that movie made, the last one made. It did all right, though. It made 470. So I think this one can clear that. I think Godzilla x Kong can sail past that. I think it can clear that and get in the $500 to $600 million range. But listen, I say that, but remember, me and the official box office projections thought it was going to be in that 50 to 55, and it exceeded those expectations. Other thing to keep in mind, keep this in mind too. Godzilla versus Kong only opened to $31 million and went on to make 470. Godzilla x Kong has made more than double what Godzilla versus Kong made on its opening weekend. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to go on to make $800 million necessarily, but I mean, it could. So I'm going to guess that it's going to land somewhere in the $500 to $600 million range. That's what I think. Now I'm going to go over and look at the thing. So it got 121 votes in. And 60% of you say no, Godzilla X Kong will not make as much as Dune 2. 40% of you think yes, it will. So there you have it. It's close though. It's close. It's going to be really... Now, one of the things that Godzilla X Kong has going for it is doesn't have a lot of real strong competition in the next week or two. Like Monkey Man is coming out this week, and I cannot wait to see Dev Patel's Monkey Man. That looks amazing, but I don't think it's going to have huge box office. So it's going to have a little bit of a runway. We'll see how well it can do. But yeah, I mean, I like this movie a lot. I will see it again. All hail the true King Kong. In the next movie, I'm sure they'll give a little bit more shine. Like in the first movie, they gave a little more shine to Godzilla. Second movie, they gave a little more shine to Kong. Maybe it'll go back and forth. Maybe in the next one, they give Kong a little bit more of the glory. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I'm looking forward to go to see it again, though. I mean, Dune 2 is the much better movie. Dune 2 is the best movie I've seen in like 10 years. But yeah, man, there's a lot of fun to be had with Godzilla versus Kong. And yeah, that's where I'm going to peg it. I'm going to peg it 500 to 600 million is where it's going to end up. Huge win for them if they do. But listen, there are some people out there that thinks this movie can get to 700 million, to get to 800 million. We'll have to keep our eyes on it and see how it goes. I mean, Sir Malcolm is also saying Civil War on April 12th. Yes, that's true. And while I am dying to see Civil War, it's not a movie that's going to appeal to the masses. I don't think Civil War is going to be making a huge amount at the box office. I mean, the reality is most of his movies, most of Alex Garland movies don't make huge box office, right? Because they're made in a certain way to appeal to certain people. And I think Civil War looks like it could be one of the best films of the year, but I don't know that it's going to make a huge amount at the box office. So I don't know that that's going to be a huge dent in it. I think it'll be profitable, but we'll see. All right, guys. Listen, with that down, let's get over to the real reason we're here, which is to take your topics, the things you guys want to talk about. So let's get on over and start taking your questions that you guys have sent into the tip link. And we're going to start off here with Nash Preds. Oh, the Nashville Predators. Writing in and asks, John, I heard you talk about this the other day, and I hate to kill the magic for you, but the voice of Sala at Disneyland is actually voice actor Bob Joles. I find that difficult to believe. He does voiceovers for Davies when he's not available. He is Gimli / Treebeard in Lord of the Rings games. Okay, now look, I'm not gonna claim to have factual knowledge about this. I'm not an intimate expert on the guttural crap hole that is Disneyland. But, and you might be right. I'm not saying you're not. I don't pretend to have all the facts. But I find this hard to believe. Because John Rhys Davies, if you've gone on the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, John Rhys Davies is featured. I mean, he had to go through days of costuming, photo shoots, all this stuff, like a couple of days worth of these things to do all the Sala stuff. Are we saying that he didn't have 30 minutes to go into a sound booth and record 5 minutes of dialogue? That would seem odd to me, that they literally got John Rhys Davies in for days to do costuming, makeup, photo shoots, all that kind of stuff for the ride presentation, but they didn't have like 20 to 30 minutes for him to come in and record audio. Again, you may be right, but I find that would be very odd and weird. Like if you're going to bring him in, I mean, he's available. You've brought him in. He's right here. We're taking his photos. We're costuming him up. We're doing all this costume, but we don't have time for him to do recording. I would find that very odd. Again, might be true. I just find that very, very odd. Anyway. Okay. Next up, we've got Twilight Boy who writes, I binged the 3-Body Problem. It had flaws and there were things in the books that the books did better, but it was a very good show. I've told all my friends to watch it and I consider you a friend, so I'll suggest you do too. I need this to be renewed ASAP. Yeah, so I talked about this on the John Campea Show a little bit earlier today. I think it was Friday night. Or Saturday night. It was like 9:30 at night. Ann and I got back from where we were out that evening, and it was still early, like 9:30. It wasn't bedtime yet, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch the first episode of 3-Body Problem. And by 6 a.m., I had watched the entire first season. I binged the entire first season that night. And I went to bed as the sun was coming up to try to get a couple of hours of sleep. I think it was very, very good. I thought it was very good. Like, it's not, to me, it's not on Shogun level. It's not on Last of Us level. It's not on House of the Dragon level, but it's a very good sci-fi show. And I had a really good time watching it, and I do hope they do a second season as well. All right. Next up, Erickson Garcia. Is that where we're at? Yes, Erickson Garcia writes, I saw Soul, Turning Red, and Luca during their limited run in theaters, and man, seeing them in cinemas felt so much better than on my laptop when they came out on Disney+. Glad I saw them the way they were meant to be seen. Dude, listen, from your lips to God's ears, the way to watch movies is still in a movie theater. I don't care what kind of TV you have at home, it's crap compared to a movie theater. I don't care what kind of sound system you have at home, it's crap compared to a movie theater. I don't care how comfy you think your couch is. It's crap compared to the real movie watching experience in an auditorium with other fans and stuff like that. It will never, ever, ever be replaced. That is the way to watch a movie. Now, I've got a nice home theater setup system. I got a 150-inch short throw laser projector with Sonos surround sound. I've got a really nice theater setup. I like watching movies in there. I do, but it's crap compared to watching it the way movies are made. There's a reason why every director says there's a way my movie's supposed to be watched, and that's in a movie theater. That's the way they're supposed to watch, and I'm glad you had a chance to watch them there, my friend. All right, next up. Luke1234 writes, when you saw Star Wars Episode 1 for the first time, did you know Darth Maul had a double-bladed lightsaber? Yes, because it was in the trailers. Because you don't see it when he fights Qui-Gon Jinn for the first time. That's true. In the beginning of the film, or in the first part of the film, when they're about to leave Tatooine and Darth Maul comes riding over and he attacks Qui-Gon. He only uses one blade of his lightsaber. And it's not until the Duel of the Fates fight later on that he reveals the second blade. But it was revealed. It was revealed in the trailer. They showed that off in the trailer. Showed off in the trailer, and it was glorious. All right. I mean, listen, the prequels are all crap. They're just big piles of garbage, but there are things in there that were great. And that Duel of the Fates fights between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Maul is like one of my favorite Star Wars things. It's incredible. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, hey, John, it's been a scary few months as our daughter was premature. Oh, no, I'm so sorry to hear about that. And has been in the NICU for 11 weeks. On the 22nd, she finally came home. That's awesome. Big thank you to the John Campea Show, as putting it on in the background helped me to keep it together on some days. We also named her Robin after her great aunt, but also in part to one of my childhood heroes, Robin Williams. That's beautiful. My girlfriend rejected my suggestion of Furiosa, though. Apologies if personal. Oh, that's not too, no, first of all, congratulations on having the little one. Congratulations on getting her home. Thank God for the modern miracles of medical science. And I think that is awesome that you named her after one of your heroes. Listen, Ann and I have often talked about what will be the name of our first child. And I kid you not, like we are in agreement on certain names. I mean, we haven't made a decision, but there are certain names we like that we both like. And honestly, Skywalker is one of the names we're considering. We're actually considering Skywalker as one of them, and, call them Sky for short. One of our best friends named their son, the son they had just a couple of years ago, named their son Obi. That is very much Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's Obi-I Obi. We've also considered Maximus. I kid you not, we've considered Maximus, of course, from Gladiator. And I've even considered Optimus. I know that sounds weird, but we've considered Optimus. Giovanni it would also be appropriate because I am named, my real name is Giovanni. I'm named after my grandfather, Giovanni. And so to have a little Giovanni the Third would be kind of neat too. But I mean, lots of things up in the air. Anyway, that is awesome. Glad to hear you and your family are doing well. Thanks for sharing that, man. I appreciate that. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got Brian O'Connor, who writes, gutted and devastated by the Shang-Chi 2 news. Which news is that? I am not looking forward to anything related to time travel or multiverse. Okay, that's right. Keep it an intimate family Shakespearean drama. That's all I want. I thought Dustin was better than that. Shang-Chi 1 is my favorite. Now, listen. Shang-Chi is I think, a top 5 MCU movie. I think it's better than Endgame. I don't think it's better than Infinity War, but I think Shang-Chi, the first one, is a better movie overall than Endgame. Sue me. I don't care what you think. And I know others have a different opinion. That's perfectly cool. For me, I think Shang-Chi is better than Endgame. Not better than Infinity War. That being said, I don't want Shang-Chi 2 just to be the same thing that Shang-Chi 1 was. Like, Shang-Chi 1 was an intimate Shakespearean drama. I don't need the sequel to be that. It's okay to expand beyond those borders. Now, look, I don't like time travel in movies. There are exceptions, obviously Back to the Future, Star Trek 4. There are some great examples of time travel. There are. In general, I don't like it in general, with some exceptions. I also, in general, don't really like multiverse. There are exceptions, though. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, for example. And so I don't want Shang-Chi 2 to have time travel and multiverse. But there are two things to keep in mind. Number one, that is not official news. That was a report by somebody who is not one of the major trades, okay? That was an online person who said they heard that, but that did not come from the Hollywood Reporter. It did not come from Variety. It did not come from, any of the major trades. That doesn't mean it's not true. I'm just saying it might not be true. So just keep that in mind. But the second thing is this, is that even though I also don't want to see time travel or multiverse in Shang-Chi, the sequel, there have been exceptions at times that I have liked it. It's rare, but it happens. And I do trust Destin. I mean, what Destin has done with the first movie is absolutely remarkable. And so even though I'm not happy to hear the news that there might be time travel and multiverse stuff in Shang-Chi 2, I am still going to adopt a wait and see attitude. Just a wait and see attitude. So we'll see how it all turns out. All right. Thanks, man. Next up, Brian O'Connor also writes, you were there when they came for her and you did nothing. Oh, this is from Shang-Chi. You stood at the window and watched her die. Wenwu was truly a broken man to say this about his 5-year-old Shang-Chi. Tragic. Absolutely one of the best MCU villains we've had so far. Wenwu is not just one of the best MCU villains. Wenwu is one of the best characters we've had in movies in the past 5 years or so. He's just beautifully multi-layered, complex, started off villain, became good guy, changed by love of family, love of his children, love of his wife, right? Changed by that. Then descends into madness again when what he loves was ripped away from him. And everything he does is motivated by pain and by wanting to recapture what he had when he was a better man, right? The Wenwu character is so utterly fantastic. You guys often hear me talk about how much I love Shang-Chi. Wenwu, the character of Wenwu, is definitely one of the main reasons I love that movie so much. All right. Next up, Walt writes, going to the movies with my son is bottled magic. I flipped hearing about Spider Mondays on your show, but my son's a bit too young. John, do you think these return to theaters are going to be a regular thing post-pandemic or due to recent strikes? Dear movie fans, wife and I got a sitter to see Dune 2, but my experience was badly distracted by the couple who went ahead and brought their kids. Of course, they were seated side by side. At one point, the dad said to the mom, cover her eyes, why bring them? Okay, so that isn't one of two and two of two. These are just two totally separate messages. Let's start with the first one here. As far as, so the Spider-Man movies are coming back to theaters. The Star Wars movies are coming back to theaters. This is not a new thing. Look, older movies have had return to theaters for as long as I've been going to the movies. I think we're seeing it a bit more right now. You know, the Pixar films, the Spider-Man films, the Star Wars films, and others, mostly because of partially pandemic, but right now it's more about the writers' strikes, the writers and the actors' strikes. This year, there are literally 30% fewer movies are hitting theaters this year as compared to last year. 30% fewer movies. That leaves a big gaping hole in the scheduling lineup for movie theaters. Movie theaters are desperate to have content on their screens that bring people in so they can buy popcorn and soda and stuff like that, and they can stay alive. So things like Sony with their Spider-Man movies, Lucasfilm with the Star Wars movies, these are opportunities for them to get back into the theaters. They're not going to make huge box office. It never does. They're not going to make huge box office, but to get back into theaters, be a goodwill sign to the movie theaters to put more content back in the theaters, make a little bit of extra money at the same time. So I don't think this is now a new, this is not a new normal, but I think it has more to do with the fact that, you know, we had all those strikes and there's been a lot of delays. Now, as far as bringing kids to films, I have no problems with people bringing their kids to films. I have no problem with it whatsoever. Why not expose your kid to the glorious art, the greatest art in the world, filmmaking? Expose your kids to it. Great. My only issue is if your kids, because kids are kids, right? This will happen. Nothing wrong with it. But if your kids happen to start to get fussy or anxious or rambunctious or whatever, that's fine. That happens. Take your kid out of the theater. That's it. That's all I want from a parent. I have no problem with a parent bringing their kids to movies. If the kids start to get out of hand, and kids do that, that's fine. That doesn't mean you have a bad kid. Just be responsible enough to everybody else in the theater who's there and paid their money to then take them out of the theater, go get them some popcorn, some candy, whatever, and maybe try seeing the movie again another time. Anyway, thanks for that, Walt. Next up, we got Tack, who writes, you've spoken of enjoying Robotech, yes. Akira and Miyazaki, yes, in the past, so I know you see the value in the art form. Is there a reason you began to reject anime outright? I don't reject anime outright. I've never said that once in my life. You are totally misrepresenting what I said and putting words in my mouth. I have never said I reject anime outright. I agree some of it gets too weird, but a lot of it is wonderfully crafted. What happened? Nothing happened. I've watched a lot of anime and a lot of it I just don't enjoy. That's all. Nothing happened. But John, you liked Akira. Yeah, because I thought Akira was good. But there are things I saw before and after Akira that I didn't like. John, you like Macross, Robotech, and that. Yeah, I did because I thought it's good. And then there's a lot of stuff that I see that I don't think is good. But I do not reject anime outright. Right? I give it a shot. Like, for instance, One Piece. A lot of people told me, John, you got to see One Piece. You got to see One Piece. So I'm like, you know what? If I rejected it outright, I would never even take a look at it. But I did. I went and watched a handful of One Piece, the animated one, not the live action one. I went and watched a handful of One Piece and I didn't like it. It doesn't work for me. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of things I think that are great that don't work for you, and that's fine too. If something comes out and it's actually really good, actually really good to me, then I'll enjoy it. And if not, then I won't enjoy it. I don't have a rule that I just firmly don't like anime. It's just that anime is designed in such a way that it will work for certain people and not work for others. And that's great. Professional wrestling is like that. Not everybody's going to like professional wrestling, and some people do. I find like a lot of anime for me doesn't quite work. And that's it. And some of it does. And so, yeah, there is no outright rejection of anime on my part. Not at all. All right. Next up, we've got Oh Boy, Madam Web writes, I haven't seen Madam Web yet, but I did watch a reaction to it. I noticed the song Scandalous by Mystique was featured in the movie. The last most notable use of that song in a movie, Catwoman. I didn't even remember that. Catchy song overall, but a curse for female superhero movies. I don't think the problem with Madam Web or Catwoman for that matter lies with the use of the song Scandalous. You know, the movie was going really good, and then they played Scandalous, and then everything went right to hell. Yeah, I think the movie was pretty bad even before the involvement of Scandalous. I could see a connection of a curse if both the movies were really good, but they bombed at the box office, and maybe you go, ooh, maybe we could then get superstitious and go, maybe it's because Scandalous. But no. These are just horrible, horrible movies. It had nothing to do with the poor song. All right. Next up, we've got The Canon, who writes, can you do your best to speculate what the commercial and critical success would have been if The Eternals was an Elseworlds story like The Joker? None. No impact whatsoever. Zero difference, zero impact whatsoever. Look, while I don't like it quite as much as Rob does, because I know Rob absolutely adores Eternals. I, nonetheless, really do quite like it. I think it's quite a good movie. And I know, and I say this because I've heard people specifically say this. It's just not like the MCU. I've heard some people say they didn't like it. It's just not like the MCU, they said. But to me, that is a strength of the film. That, you know, you got Chloe Zhao, who won Best Director at the Academy Awards. Her film won Best Movie at the Academy Awards. And she comes in and does this movie, and she really made a deeper film with different approaches to mythology and all that kind of stuff. And it was not, you know, it was not your traditional MCU DNA, but nonetheless, I thought it was really quite good. And some people like Rob thought it was like one of the boldest things that the MCU had ever done. Fair enough, but I think it was really good. But that being said, it almost does function like an Elseworld film, because other than the fact that around the dinner table, somebody said, well, who's going to lead the Avengers now? There's really no connection to the rest of the MCU. I mean, obviously it is in the MCU, but other than a couple of references here and there, it really wasn't connected at all. It might as well have been kind of an Elseworlds film. So if they had just said it was an Elseworlds film, I don't really think it would have made any difference. I think it still would have made the money that it made. I still think it would have been received the way it was received. And for me, I thought it was a very good movie. I really did. I mean, not top 10 MCU films or anything like that, but I thought it was a very solid movie. And some people like Rob think it's absolutely fabulous. So yeah, there's that. All right, next up. We've got The Canon also writes, following up on your Marvel/DC crossover conversation, I used to have a channel and we did a pitch meeting segment for this. I pitched Lobo/Deadpool crossover. Lobo had a bounty for Spider-Man and got Deadpool on accident, led to a space adventure, fan since MOS. Listen, that sounds like a great YouTube short. It also sounds like a great comic story. I don't know that it would work as a movie. Most people who would be going to see Deadpool wouldn't even know who Lobo is. I, for one, am very excited for James Gunn to bring Lobo to the big screen, if he ever gets around to it. But again, I'm just not... Nothing interests me about the idea of a DC and MCU crossover. Nothing about it excites me at all. I just think the whole thing would become a convoluted, who's in charge, which characters get the... Listen, they can't even do a Godzilla versus Kong movie without people bitching and crying. I had Rob on my show today crying that they did Godzilla dirty. I'm giving Rob a hard time. But you're like, if you saw my show earlier today, Rob was on there and he said, the one thing I didn't like about Godzilla versus Kong is they did Godzilla dirty. It's like, what are you talking about? Did Godzilla dirty? But listen, think about that. And how many people got upset earlier in the show when I said, I loved watching Kong knocking Godzilla out. How many people got upset, started yelling at me, or started clicking the dislike button on my video, or if that's even there anymore. Anyway, now imagine that times 1,000. Times 1,000. First of all, you'd have the two companies constantly arguing about which of the two characters, whose character looks better, which character gets the most choice lines, which character should win that fight, which character should be the one to figure out that riddle, which character, there's all that. But then you're going to get the fans You're going to get the DC fans who will hate any time that the Marvel character looks a little better in a scene, and you're going to get the DC fans that hate it, or the Marvel fans that'll hate it whenever a DC character gets a little bit more of the shine. I don't see the upside. And for example, if they made like a Deadpool Lobo crossover, you know how much money it would make at the box office? The same amount of money a Deadpool movie would make, except you didn't need a Lobo. Lobo wouldn't add anything to it, I don't think. And most people who go to the movies to see a Deadpool movie or a Lobo movie or a Superman movie, they're going to see, there's not a lot of people who rush out to see Deadpool that wouldn't also go to see a Superman movie, right? I mean, I just don't see the upside. I don't see the win. Now, that doesn't mean there can't be, and it doesn't mean that it couldn't work. I'm just saying, for me, whenever the conversations come up of like crossing over DC with Marvel, it's always presented just as a gimmick, and I don't see the need for it. I would rather the two different cinematic universes just focus on their own cinematic universes and make the best product they can possible. So that's always just been my kind of take on it at any rate. But again, what you're pitching sounds like it would be a really interesting YouTube short or a really interesting comic book to read. That could be really an interesting idea. All right. Dangerous D writes, did you know that there's a Law and Order show based in Toronto? I think I heard about that. I saw the first 5 episodes and I like it. Have you seen the show? Do you like it? No, I haven't seen the show. I don't even know if it's available in the US. And to be honest, I really don't watch the Law and Order shows. I used to. I don't know why I stopped. Like, Law and Order shows are these great episode crime of the week shows that are pretty fun to turn on and just watch a bit of, but I've never really gotten into them very much. But no, the answer, I haven't seen the Law and Order Toronto. I haven't seen that one yet. All right, next up. Where are we? Tumbling to RD Nado, who writes, Tornado. Hey, John, Rob, Chris, and Ray. Just me doing open mics. I saw an interview with Carrie Coon, and she said her husband has a 10,000 Blu-ray and DVD collection. Rob, are you secretly married to Carrie Coon? Yeah, I see, this is one of the reasons why I don't collect physical media. Number one, first of all, you guys don't see it, but off camera, like, Rob is always complaining. And I get this because I would be too, about like how much just space his DVD and Blu-ray collection takes up, and never knowing where anything is and having to go through it, and how many of his discs he loses or misplaced or gets lost in translation and all that kind of stuff and whatever. I can't imagine having to deal with that. I can't imagine having to deal with that. And here's the reality. 9,000 of those 10,000 DVDs will never be opened. They'll never be opened. They're just going to sit there and take up space. Now, there's an argument to be made, though, just about collections and collecting them and having them there, right? And there's something to that. I mean, there's an argument to be made for that. I can see that. And there are definitely advantages to physical media over streaming. True, there are. I acknowledge that. I completely believe there are some advantages. But, like, yeah, for me, the advantages of being a strictly streaming guy far outweigh the advantages of physical media. Far outrageous. So here's a common argument that people bring up. Digital doesn't belong to you, says Skunky Monkey. By contract agreement. Yep. And how much do you think over 10 years that I've been collecting digital movies, do you think that's impacted me one little bit? The answer, 0 times. 0 times. So you can throw this theoretical problem. You don't actually own the movie. Okay. So it hasn't impacted me in over 10 years at all. But I'll tell you this, in the amount of time that I was a physical media collector, I've lost or had damaged or misplaced or somebody borrowed or whatever a number of movies. Rob told me the other day the amount of DVDs, Blu-rays, and whatever that have just like disappeared from his collection, either from being misplaced, lost in a move, somebody borrowed them, whatever. Tons, way more than I'll ever lose having them in digital. Because in 10 years, I haven't lost a single movie. Not a single movie. I can open up my phone right now I have access to my entire movie collection of the past 10 years that I've been collecting movies digitally. So you can come at me with these theoretical problems. You don't actually own them. Okay. Has that affected me in one bit? Nope. Hasn't affected me at all. Zero impact on me whatsoever. But you know what I don't have? I don't have 40 shelves taking up space, holding DVDs, most of which will never be opened and actually put in a player again. Again, there are big advantages. There are some serious, real advantages to physical media as well. 100%. But for me, the digital approach is just way better. Way, way, way better. I have access to every single movie I had at any time, no matter where I am. I never lose any of my stuff. It's all right there laid out. And if I don't want something anymore, well, I still have it and it's not taking up any space, but whatever. That's just me. Like, there are good arguments for people who collect this stuff. Like Rob has a magnificent collection and he loves his collection, and there's totally advantages to that. It's just not for me. All right. Cause I did collect physical media for a long time. All right. Next up, Scott Brown writes, the character I really want to see in Gunn's DCU is the Question. I've always wanted to see him live action. I think with Gunn, it could happen. I think he could make for a great series. I love Matthew Rhys from The Americans and Perry Mason to play him. I'm going to be honest with you. I've never been a big fan of the character. Now, that being said, I have a number of characters that I really love that nobody else sees the appeal in. And so I totally get it. The Question for me, honestly, and you're not the first one to write that in, Scott. I know some people that love the Question, want to see the Question. And by the way, you're 100% right. The Question is totally a character that James Gunn would do. 100% it's a character he would do. So I would not be surprised at all if James Gunn takes a swing. I mean, after all, James Gunn is the guy who did Polka Dot Man. So yeah, the question's there. I know Chris would love to see a series or movie on the Question. For me, I've never really seen the appeal, but that's just me. But 100% right, Scott. Now that James Gunn is running things, the chances of getting the Question, I think, are better than ever. So we'll see if it actually comes to pass. All right. Thanks for that, Scott. Next up, Twilight Boy writes, if you've ever been a fan of Walking Dead, then I can't recommend the new miniseries about Rick's whereabouts enough. That's called The Ones Who Lived, right? I think that's the name of it. About Rick's whereabouts enough. It's a truly massive step up in quality and has some of the best acting on TV at the moment. It's a great re-entry point if you dropped. You know what? I have heard very good things about The Ones Who Lived. I think that's the name of it. I've heard very, very good things about it. But I'm just over that whole world. I'm not saying other people need to be over it. It's just that I watched many seasons of Walking Dead, and I didn't get sick of it. I just had my fill. I'll give you an example. The other night, Ann and me and a couple of friends, we did something we haven't done in like 10 years. We went to Applebee's. The only reason we haven't been to 10 years is my wife doesn't like Applebee's. But after 9 p.m., they have half price apps. Half price off their apps. And they have some pretty good appetizers. So me and Ann and a couple of our friends, we went over to Applebee's. And we are there and enjoying our apps and all that kind of stuff. And one of the apps that I got was a plate of mozzarella sticks. And you know, if you watch my show and if you're wise, mozzarella sticks with sour cream dipping, forget the marinara sauce. Use sour cream for dipping. I know that sounds weird, but it tastes awesome. So one of the apps we get is a plate of mozzarella sticks, normally $10, $5 because it's half price, right? And so I'm enjoying a couple of mozzarella sticks. And at some point, I stop eating them, not because suddenly I'm sick of mozzarella sticks. It's just that, you know what? I enjoyed these mozzarella sticks. They were delicious, but I've had my fill right now. I've had my fill of these delicious mozzarella sticks. That's how I kind of feel about Walking Dead. It's not that I got sick of it. It's just that I had my fill of it. And I think I tried to watch like a couple of minutes of Fear the Walking Dead. And I was like, no, it's the same thing. I feel like I'm just shoving more mozzarella sticks in my mouth. I've had enough of the world. And so then when Dead City came out, I didn't watch that. And now that The Ones Who Live, it's still the Walking Dead world. And again, I'm not saying other people shouldn't still totally enjoy it and be a part of it and that it might not be excellent. It's just for me, I've had my fill of it. You know, I've moved on. I remember it fondly. I think it was a great show for a time, and I've just kind of now moved on from it. But I'm glad you're enjoying it, and I'm glad there are a bunch of people really enjoying it because I know a lot of people got excited when Rick was going to come back. All right. Next up, we've got Twilight Boy again, who says, this has just been an amazing TV year. 3 Body Problem, The Walking Dead Rick miniseries, X-Men 97, and of course Shogun are all appointment TV for me. And we still got House of the Dragon, The Boys, and Dune Prophecy coming. I'll tell you what, I am so ludicrously excited for all of those things. House of the Dragon, the new season of The Boys, the new Dune thing. I can't wait for us to get our first look at it. So much good stuff still to come, but Shogun, man. Look, I'm not going to sit here and wax poetic even more. Oh, and by the way, Michael Gonzalez brings up another one that I'm dying to see. Penguin. How good does Penguin look? I'll answer that. Real freaking good. Penguin looks amazing. So much good. But guys, Shogun. If you're not watching Shogun, what are you doing? What are you doing? Watch Shogun. It is the best thing on TV right now. I put it up there in the conversation with the 2 other primary shows. House of the Dragon, Last of Us, Shogun. Best TV of the last 5 years. It's so absolutely incredible. I really hope Shogun, we're now rounding the corner. We're in the last half of the season now. I really, really hope they stick the landing because, man, this show has been so good. All right. Let's move on here. Next up, we've got Amin, who writes, according to reports, Pedro Pascal has already finished filming his scenes for The Last of Us Season 2. Won't go into spoilers, but it seems like they won't be extending certain events after all. And like the game, the scene will happen in the first couple of episodes. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what he means talking about, a few days ago, a report, again, not from any of the major trades, but a report started going around claiming that Pedro Pascal had wrapped his shooting of Last of Us Season 2 after only about 3 weeks. And the show is going to be shooting until August. But here's the important thing. The day after that report went all over the place. Because remember, it didn't come from one of the major trades. It didn't come from Variety. It didn't come from the Hollywood Reporter. It didn't come from Deadline. It came from one of these online guys, an online guy who's got a pretty good record, by the way. No, not casting any shade on anybody. But it came from one of the online guys, not from one of the real trades. And the day after that report got around, Warner Brothers officially put out a statement and said, yeah, that's not true. Pedro Pascal is not done shooting his stuff for Last of Us Season 2. That report is false. And again, it came from somebody online who's, as far as online guys go, is pretty solid. It's just, again, it brings up the point that I'm always bringing up to my fellow film fans. When it comes to reports and stories that come from online, don't buy into them. I'm not saying reject them. I'm just saying don't buy into them until it's actually also reported in one of the major trades. Because if it's true and if it's real, one of the major trades will also report it. A great example of this is, Jeff Schneider. Jeff Schneider is again, another one of these guys who is actually really reputable online. And I remember he broke the story about Harrison Ford being the new Thunderbolt Ross. I believe it was Jeff who broke that story, right? So, well, like I always do, it's Jeff, so he's pretty reputable. So I file that away, but I don't completely buy into it until I see it in the trades. And what happened? Within about 48 hours, sure enough, the major trades started to break it as well. And they confirmed what Jeff said. Then I can completely buy it. So this situation about Pedro Pascal's, finishing his Last of Us shooting early. This is another great example of why you should hold off on buying into it. Again, I'm not saying reject it, file it away, but not buying into it until it's also confirmed by one of the major trades, because that story, guys, went everywhere. It went everywhere because this one online guy said it. All these other, websites and blogs and YouTube channels started to run with it. And then the next day, Warner Brothers came out and said, that's not true. He is still shooting. He's not done shooting. So just something for us to keep in mind. All right. Next up. Let's see here. We got RH Moves writes, "Hey, John and crew, this is my first ever super chat. Well, it's actually a tip, but thank you anyway for writing in, RH. Appreciate that, man. My family and I were looking into going to the John Williams concert at the Hollywood Bowl, and that you've attended over the years, but tickets aren't available on the Bowl's website. Really? Where do you get your tickets from?" Listen, okay, so every time we've gone to the Hollywood Bowl, Ann is the one who gets our tickets. So I can't say where Ann got them from, but I'm almost positive she gets them from the Hollywood Bowl website. Almost positive. What I would suggest is, if you don't find the tickets on the Hollywood Bowl website, just go to Ticketmaster. Go to Ticketmaster or Vivid Seats or one of these other ticketing companies and look for it there. But you should be able to find them, no problem. Again, as far as I know, Ann bought them right off the Hollywood Bowl website, but it is possible maybe she got them on Ticketmaster or something like that. So my recommendation, RH, is go check out Ticketmaster and see what you can find there. And highly recommend you go. It's one of mine and Ann's favorite things to do. It's one of our annual events that we look forward to every year, going to see the maestro of the movies, John Williams, the goat of goats, doing this live show, playing his greatest music and some of the other great music from other great Hollywood composers from great movies. It's always one of the best times we have every year. Definitely go to see it if you have a chance. All right. Next up, we've got the Lisan Al-Gaib writes, "Hey, John, love Dune 2 and haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Best movie ever. Anyway, I just recently watched the 2021 James Wan movie, Malignant. I was wondering if you or the crew has seen it, and if so, what did you think?" First of all, Dune 2 is probably the best movie I've seen in the last 10 years. I don't know that I call it the greatest movie ever, but to me, it's like probably the best I've seen in the last 10 years. Second thing, I love James Wan. Love James Wan. Third, I didn't like Malignant. It's funny because I remember getting all hyped to see it because a lot of people I know really enjoyed it and really liked it, and it was getting hyped up, and I was excited to see it. Love James Wan, and I just didn't like Malignant. I'll be honest, I didn't hate it, but I was close to hating it. So, I mean, I didn't hate it, but I really didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was very good at all. And it's so weird because it's just one of those movies that a bunch of people I know really did enjoy it. And, but to me, it was just, it made no sense. It didn't follow its own internal logic whatsoever. It just made some real big leaps that I just thought were ridiculous. So MJ Joseph M Joseph is saying live chat, it's dope and creepy. And I like that. I like creepy. I didn't find Malignant creepy. I found it really, frankly, kind of dull. But again, that was just me. And I am not in the majority on this. Most people I know personally really did like it. And I'm glad you liked it. It's just one of those films that for me didn't quite work for me, even though I love James Wan. All right. Thanks for writing that in, man. Next up. James Dunn writes, "Hey, John, I don't think this will happen, but it'll be a moment of levity in Joker 2 if we get Joker and Harley in a shared consciousness musical number. Then we cut to a random person who can just see two crazy people dancing and singing on the street." Here's the thing. Another movie already did that. Avengers Endgame did that. You remember the scene? In Avengers Endgame, Nebula and Rhodey, War Machine, go back to the beginning. They go back in time to the beginning of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Of course, one of the greatest openings to an MCU movie. Star-Lord is wearing his Walkman and he's listening to "Come and Get Your Love." All right, one of the greatest openings ever to an MCU movie. And he's dancing around, "Come and get your love." And he's dancing all over the place, right? But then in Endgame, it smash cuts to Nebula and War Machine just watching him. And of course, they don't hear the music. They just see Chris Pratt dancing around and looking really stupid. So it's kind of the same thing. So I don't know if they'll do that, especially since Joker is a DC character, and what they would not want to be accused of is copying something from a Marvel movie. So yeah, I don't think they'll do that because we already kind of saw that done, James. But hey, listen, I do believe we are going to get Joker 2 is not going to be a comedy per se, but I do think we're going to get some really good moments of levity in there as well. It is, after all, the Joker. All right, next up. Jay Newby writes, I know this will never happen, but if they did, let me try this again. I know this will never happen, but if they did do Spider-Man 4, by 4, I'm assuming you mean the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 4, not the upcoming Tom Holland Spider-Man 4. But if they did do Spider-Man 4, I'd love to see Joaquin Phoenix pop up as Doctor Strange. They do mention Strange in Spider-Man 2, so he must exist. Never read too much into quick little Easter egg and name drops into anything that must mean. Don't ever read too much into that. Anyway, so he must exist. And also Phoenix could play the role without the multi-fin commitment. A guy can dream. Here's the problem though. What would be the point of it? Right, Jay? I mean, what would be the point of it? The reality is, now for those of you who don't know, before Benedict Cumberbatch was signed on to play Doctor Strange, Joaquin Phoenix was lined up to play the role. And that got a lot of people, including me, very excited, right? He's an Academy level actor. I mean, so is Benedict Cumberbatch, but Joaquin Phoenix is one of the finest actors today. And the talks got very, very serious. And they were trying to nail down the contract. He had basically gotten the role. But where they could not agree was that Joaquin Phoenix did not want to sign a multi-film deal. And Marvel wisely didn't want to cast him without a multi-film deal. And so the two sides weren't able to come to an agreement, and it never happened. Now, here's the problem, Jay. 95% of moviegoers do not know that story. Right? 95% of moviegoers do not know that story and have no idea that Joaquin Phoenix was going to play Doctor Strange. And so it would just be very weird and awkward if just out of nowhere, Joaquin Phoenix's Doctor Strange shows up and people have, wait, why is Joaquin Phoenix here? And I thought Benedict Cumberbatch was Doctor Strange, and and again, what's the purpose? What would it be for? Now, if there's a classic Spider-Man story that Sam Raimi wanted to adapt and Doctor Strange is a part of that story, well, now we're talking. Like right now, there's a reason why maybe we could talk about doing something like that. But otherwise, just to do it for the sake of doing it, I think that becomes more of a distraction than anything else. Anyway, that's just kind of my take on it. Anyway, thanks for that, Jay. Appreciate that, man. All right. Garden Variety Vagabond writes, John, all caught up on the show now. I've been playing a bunch of Act 3 Baldur's Gate 3. Love Baldur's Gate 3. The writers are not as hell, pun intended. I'm playing the vampire with the Shar cleric as love interest. I'm playing him as neutral, and she converted. Had him kill thousands of vampire converts and followed it up with cheating on her with the devil. Yeah, that can be done. And she was okay with it and also wants a 4-way with 2 drow. Yep, I remember that scene in the game. They are all about bringing on the filthy and so much TNA and penises, also sex with Gith. Okay, that's the end of it. Yeah, listen, man, Baldur's Gate 3. I know I talked a lot about it when it came out. Of course, I'm a Dungeons and Dragons player. I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons player. I'm a tabletop role-playing game player. I love playing tabletop role-playing games, like real role-playing games, character sheets. You're actually at the same table with your friends. You're playing the game. Nothing better. It's so much fun. It's the best thing you can do with a group of friends, other than maybe an orgy. That would also be a very fun night, but depending on your friends, I suppose. That being said, this is declining quickly. This is getting out of hand. This is spiraling out of hand really fast. I'll reel it back in. Okay, reel it back in. Here we go. So, but role-playing games, absolutely fantastic. And I remember when they were first talking about Baldur's Gate 3, them making the claim that you'll never play a video game that gives you as close to the real role-playing game experience as Baldur's Gate 3. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard that before. But like even like a game like Divinity Original Sin, was that what it's called? Original Sin? Divinity 2. I remember I played Divinity 2 and there was this like huge, you think about, it's nothing has ever come as close to that real role-playing game feeling. And Divinity 2 is really good, but it didn't have that feeling. Baldur's Gate 3 totally had that feeling. I love it. There's so much you can do. The characters are so rich and it really feels like you're playing a real role-playing game. And it deservedly so won Best Game of the Year at the Game Awards. And because it was by far the best game of the year. It's absolutely incredible. And I'm getting ready, I think after Cinemacon, which is next week, by the way, I think after Cinemacon, I'm going to restart up Baldur's Gate 3. I'm going to start with a brand new character, take a different story path, all that kind of stuff. But I am really looking forward to doing that. All right. Next up. Garden Variety Vagabond again writes, my favorite faith-based movie is The Life of Brian. I don't know if you can qualify a Monty Python movie as a faith-based film, but as a theology grad myself, my classmates and I would love all the minute those geniuses include, to include having the soldier's name being a pantherist to reference the pantherist theory. Where'd it go? This refers to the account of Origen in his Against Celsus, referring to Greek philosopher claiming a soldier named Tiberius Julius Abdus Pantera knocked up Mary and was the actual father of Jesus, who called Yeshua ben Pantera in the Jewish Talmud. The thing about Monty Python, if you really go in and watch Life of Brian, anything else, right? And now for something completely different. They are so smart. Even when they're doing something as dumb as the dead bird sketch. Just show of hands, yes or no in the live chat. You guys ever seen the Monty Python dead parrot sketch? Just say yes or no in the live thing. It is an parrot. It has ceased to be. And I don't know if you guys have seen it. Sir Mameston is saying yes. Jonathan's saying yes. Dr. Singh is saying no. And Joseph, if any of you are saying no, go look it up. It's amazing. Go look up the Monty Python dead parrot sketch and look up the Monty Python cheese shop sketch. The cheese shop sketch is unbelievable. Most Monty Python is unbelievable. But here's the thing. When you get past all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of deep cuts in Monty Python's humor. A lot of deep cuts. And it's one of the things that makes them so unique that there's never been another Monty Python. Like there have been, other kind of troops, like even Canada has a great comedy troupe, Kids in the Hall and stuff like that. But there's never been another Monty Python. And I highly recommend, if you haven't seen a lot of it, go just check out those sketches and definitely watch the movies. All right. Next up, Rich writes, although I thought it was a perfect ending to Iron Man and Cap's story in Endgame, in a hypothetical world where yourself and Rob are in charge of the MCU and could go back and change it, would you keep Tony alive and Steve around? Thanks and have a great one. Well, here's the thing. It's not about going back and changing what Marvel did with Tony and Steve. Those were great moments in the movie Endgame. But they're comic book movies. You don't have to bring Steve or Tony back or both. You don't have to go back and change anything. There's any one of a million things you can do and say this is why Tony's back. And any one of a million things you can do or say this is why Steve's back. The comics do it all the time. When DC did the death of Superman and Superman died, they completely changed comics forever when they brought Superman back. I mean, listen, they were always going to bring Superman back. But when they killed Superman at the hands of Doomsday, and it was this biggest thing, it was like front headline news on all the major newspapers, major news networks, the whole thing. They killed Superman. Now, when they brought him back, they fundamentally changed comics forever because death was no longer a problem, right? I don't think you can name a superhero character that hasn't died at least 5 times and been brought back. I mean, even just X-Men. You know how many times Wolverine's been killed and then brought back? Cyclops has been killed and brought back. Charles Xavier has been killed and brought back. Magneto. They just did a storyline where, after being killed, like Storm travels into the afterlife to go and find Magneto and bring Magneto back to life, right? I mean, there is no such thing anymore. Death is not actually a problem in comic book movies anymore. Now, that's not a good thing, but it is part of the reality. So in this, weird, wacky time that you live in and in the MCU, you can have any one of 1,000 plot points you can just mention and drop of a hat. You know what it is? Wong. Wong can go, I've realized as the Sorcerer Supreme, because remember, right now, Wong is the Sorcerer Supreme in the MCU. Wong can go, Tony is needed very badly right now. And in the ancient library of Cancuna, there is an ancient text of blah, blah, blah. And then they go and get it and they bring back Tony Stark. The reality is in the comic book movies, it's not difficult to do. It drives me crazy when they do it to a point, yes, but I really think Marvel needs Tony and Steve, and there's not really much you have to do. And in order to do that, you don't actually have to change anything about the movies that have come before. You just introduce something to bring them back, and away you go. All right. Next up, Batman Beyond for life. Too bad nobody watched enough to get more than just a couple of seasons. Anyway, hey, John, McGregor said be nice in the final fight scene. Did he? I didn't hear him say it if it was. And by the way, he's not the one who should be saying it. Dalton should be saying it, but whatever. Also, has anybody on the show seen Blue Mountain State? I asked because Alan Ritchson plays the complete opposite of his character on Reacher, which I think shows his underrated range. Thanks for bringing on the filthy. Yes, he did, but, and I say this with love, he wasn't winning any Emmys for his performance in Blue Mountain State. By the way, it's not meant as a knock on it. I love him in Reacher. I absolutely love him in Reacher. So I'm not trying to cast shade on him at all. I'm a fan. But let's be honest. He wasn't going to win any Emmys for, his portrayal in Blue Mountain State. It just, that wasn't going to happen. And I think he'll be the first one to tell you that. So I don't know if that's a good example of showing his range. He is clearly a much better actor today than he was umpteen years ago, right? He is clearly a much better actor today. So what I want to see is what his range today is like. It would be unfair to take like literally a role he played when he was a kid to see, because that's not fair. He was not that good back then. He's good now, and I would like to see what he can do now. That's my take on it. All right. Next up, prequels are the best, writes. Personal opinion, the MCU was only as good as its lead heroes. That's not necessarily true. Once Downey Jr. and Chris Evans left, I feel like they wanted to pass the torch to Boseman to carry, but due to his unfortunate passing, that plan fell through, leaving them reeling still to this day. Yes and no. I mean, look, the reality is that T'Challa was still just one character, right? And the actors are never bigger than the characters, but he was still just one character. And Marvel's putting out a lot of movies and TV shows, and, most of them are not going to have him in it. Any movie, it's not just MCU, it's not just DCEU, it's not just Star Wars. Any movie is normally only as good as their main protagonists, right? It's very difficult to have a movie where you don't have a very good protagonist and yet the movie's very good. Actually, does anybody want to try to throw out some names of movies that are really great, but the protagonist wasn't actually all that good? I can't think of one off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I can't think of one off the top of my head. You got to have great characters. And great characters is a part of having a great story. because characters inhabit and flesh out the story. Sir Malmston is saying Avatar. I don't know. Sully was a pretty good character, man. Anyway, that's not a bad one to bring up. Okay, Kong Skull Island. Yeah, but Kong Skull Island wasn't a great movie. I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty fun, but I don't think it was great. Godzilla 2014, again, not a great movie. A lot of people are kind of disappointed with it. Anyway, the point is, even though I'm sure there are some exceptions, it's very difficult for any kind of movie to be a great movie without great characters, particularly your protagonists. It also really helps if you have really great antagonists. And in Tony and Steve, you had great protagonists, but they had other films that had great protagonists. There is no Cap there is no Tony in Guardians of the Galaxy. So they made other great characters, and that movie and that franchise was remarkably and incredibly successful. The problem, look, Tony and Steve not being in the MCU anymore is a problem. I've been saying this for years. It is a problem. But it's not the main problem. The main problem is that Marvel is creating too much content. They're working with lesser talented people because they're making so much. So the more you make, the less talented people you have to work with. And they're simply not creating great stories. Take freaking Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I really don't like that movie at all. Just putting Steve in it isn't going to make that movie any better. It might give me a kick to see Chris Evans back as Captain America, but the problem is it's a bad movie. And just dropping Steve or Tony in there isn't going to fix a bad movie. You've got to have a great story, right? You got to make a great story. And while the MCU has made some great stories since Endgame, Ms. Marvel, WandaVision, Shang-Chi, Guardians of the Galaxy 3. They have made some. They've made a lot more than they're used to making that aren't all that good. And I think until they fix that, it doesn't matter which characters you have there or not. Even if the great Chadwick Boseman was still here today, Marvel would still be in a pretty bad state because they're making a lot of content that does not live up to their other standard of excellence. And until you fix that, nothing else really matters, right? Anyway, all right, next up. Shekel Money writes, is Shogun broadcast in English in the United States? No. Where I'm from, it's broadcast in Japanese, which makes it hard for me to follow the series. Well, I mean, to be clear, in Shogun, they speak 3 languages: English, Portuguese, and Japanese. When the characters are speaking English, clearly we hear them speak in English. Like when the main character, John Blackthorne, is talking to his crew, they're speaking English and we hear them in English. However, when John Blackthorne is speaking to his interpreter, he speaks in Portuguese. But in the show, when the characters are speaking Portuguese, we hear English. All right. So when they're speaking English, we hear English. When they're speaking in Portuguese, we hear English. But when they speak in Japanese, we hear Japanese. And a lot of the show is in Japanese. I would venture to say a majority of the show is in Japanese. So English, Portuguese, we hear English. When they're speaking Japanese, we hear Japanese. And that is the way it's broadcast here. And obviously you got to watch it with subtitles. And then it's up to whether or not you're somebody who can read subtitles or not, or, enjoys reading subtitles or not. All right. Next up, we've got Amin who writes, I've seen a lot of films twice in the theaters, but I've only seen a few 3 times. Guardians of the Galaxy, Age of Ultron, Rogue One, and now Dune 2 is on that list. Oh, and I've only seen one film 4 times in theaters, and that's The Force Awakens. Yeah, it is so funny to say that I probably saw The Force Awakens in theaters, gosh, a dozen times. Probably saw it in theaters a dozen times. Again, it was just, Star Wars was back after a long absence. And just that alone was enough to make me giddy. But I've told this story before. So I quite enjoyed I mean, it's not as good as Rogue One. It's not as good as the original trilogy, obviously, but it's certainly better than all of the frickin' prequels put together. But I remember me and the late, great John Schnepp, because at the time, our studio and offices were right across the street from the AMC Burbank 16. And both John Schnepp and I really liked The Force Awakens. And so quite often, when we would finish the main show, we would do the movie talk. And we'd done movie talk. And if we had like 3 or 4 hours until the next show we were supposed to do, if we had that kind of time, we'd go, well, let's head over to the AMC. Because, of course, we had our membership cards to AMC because we worked for AMC. And we would just go across the street and watch a giant hawk just flew across my window. It's amazing. Anyway, we would go across like sometimes 2 to 3 times a week. And we did this for weeks. 2 to 3 times a week, we'd run across the street and go watch The Force Awakens again. Again, I do not like The Force Awakens as much as Rogue One or Guardians of the Galaxy or a number of those other films, but we just got a real kick out of watching it. And we got in this pattern for a couple of weeks of walking across the street to go watch it. So there you go. All right. Next up, Chris H. writes, if you haven't already, you should watch the new Spiderverse short film. It's really good. Listen, you guys who watch me regularly know I absolutely frickin' love the Miles Morales Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse movies. Love, 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 love them. Across the Spider-Verse should have been nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Should have been nominated. Don't know why it wasn't. Anyway. So it was with great excitement that I jumped online when I heard that the new Miles Spider-Verse short film came out. And it's about 5, 6, 7 minutes. I'll be honest with you, I didn't think it was all that good. Like, I understood that the movie's about Miles having anxiety. That's what the short's about. I'm like, okay, it's about him having to deal with anxiety. But that's all it was. It was literally like, here's Miles, and look, Miles is having anxiety. And then it ends. Like, shorts can have story, and I didn't find there to be any story in it. It was just, here's Miles, and look, he's suffering with anxiety. I'm like, all right. I would have liked a little bit more than that. Again, you can have a short 5, 6, 7, 8 minute long film and have a beginning, middle, and end. And I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't think it was that great. Now, I'm sure the next movie is going to be Beyond the Spider-Verse. I'm sure it's going to be amazing, just like the first 2 movies were. But yeah, I didn't really love it. I wish I did, but I didn't really love it. Anyway. Okay, next up. We have Owen who writes, if an adaptation of Dune Messiah is made and is as good as part 1 and part 2, do you think Dune will go down as one of the best trilogies ever, up there with the OG Star Wars and Lord of the Rings? Yes. I think if Dune Messiah gets made, number 1 gets made, and if Dune Messiah number 2 is as good as Dune 1 and Dune 2, then yes, it enters into that conversation with Godfather, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings as the greatest trilogies ever made. It gets into that conversation. I have my doubt that Dune Messiah can be that good, though. As far as the book goes, it's nowhere near as good as the first Dune book. Dune, and I've only ever read 2. I know there's like 23 Dune novels. I've only read 2. I've read Dune and I've read Dune Messiah. Dune Messiah is not that great. And they do a lot of things that I don't think fans are going to like. So I have my doubts. I'm not saying it can't be. I'm saying I have my reservations that Dune Messiah can be as good as the first Dune films, because the first 2 Dune films are based on the better book. Now Dune Messiah is going to be based on the not as great book. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. All right. Next up, we've got The Monitor who writes, Halo Season 2 finale did the flood far better than I could have imagined. Far more terrifying and gruesome than in the games. Since the flood consumes all the information and memories their victims possess, it now knows everything Parangoski and Ani did. Listen, I know there's a lot of angry debate about it. My basic feeling on Halo, and you've heard me say this before, is this. Season 1 of Halo was all right. It was all right. It was just interesting enough that I kept watching, and I watched it through to the finale. By the way, I thought season 1 finale was pretty solid. I thought season 1 finale was pretty solid. So overall, I thought the first season 1 of Halo was at best all right. Season 2, while not great, I wouldn't say, hey, season 2 is great. I wouldn't say that. But I think season 2 is a distinct improvement over season 1. I think most people agree with that. Even people who didn't like season 2 would say that season 2 is at least a big improvement over season 1. I thought season 2 was a distinct improvement, and I really enjoyed the finale a lot. Like, I thought the final episode was great, and the introduction of the flood and all that kind of stuff. I think they did a lot of good things in it. And so I'll be interested to see where they go with season 3. I'll be very interested. All right. Next up, Sam Elliott's mustache. That's a great name. Writes, context is key, people. For example, someone in Amazon's movie finance department recently said we need a new accountant, and the message was clearly passed along without context. That, my friends, is how we're getting the Accountant 2 mystery solved. Now, look, I've said this on the show. I am so happy we are getting another accountant movie. I really enjoyed the first one, but I never in a million years thought we'd actually get another one because, frankly, nobody saw the first one. It did not do well at the box office at all. And it's been, 7 or 8 years? Correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat, guys, but I think it's been what year did the first accountant come out? I want to say 2016? So it's been I think it was around there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's been 8 years since the first accountant came out, and not many people saw the first one, and it didn't do all that well. And I kind of lost hope. And guys in the live chat are saying, yes, 2016 is what people are saying right now. Okay, good to know. All right, so, but the problem, nobody went to go see it. So I never would have thought in a million years they'd make another one. I was so happy. So damn happy when I found out they were making another one. And they're shooting right now. They're on set. They're shooting the second one. I'm very excited about it, and I cannot wait. But it does, Sam, remain a bit of a mystery about how it got greenlit. It's because I don't know how they got that accomplished, but I'm glad that they did. All right. Next up, versus Hello Jerry writes, next Friday, I'm going to a con to meet Wayne Knight. Oh, now I get it. Hello, Jerry. You're talking about Newman. Wayne Knight, and hope to get him to sign a vintage Barbasol can. That's awesome. Are you a bigger fan of Nedry or Newman? And which role do you think he is more known for? I have to go Nedry. Stick, stupid, stick. Still kills me. My favorite part of him in the original Jurassic Park is when he's meeting with his contact, and he's like, and the contact's like, keep your voice down, goes, oh no, it's so-and-so, everybody. It's look, everybody, it's so-and-so. See, nobody cares. Such a great moment. But make no mistake about it. He's best known for being Newman. Seinfeld is generally considered to be the greatest sitcom of all time. I don't personally have it at number 1. I have it in my top 3 best sitcoms of all time. But generally speaking, I think the general consensus in the world is that Seinfeld is considered by many people to be the greatest sitcom of all time. It's still, to a lot of people, kind of considered the gold standard. And Newman. It's funny. My wife, Ann, has never watched Seinfeld. And so right before Christmas, she started binge watching Seinfeld. She's now halfway through season 9, the final season. And she was just watching the episode yesterday where Kramer and Newman get a rickshaw. So freaking funny. Anyway, yeah, I would say by quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I think probably a lot of people don't even remember that Newman is in Jurassic Park. I'll bet you a lot of people don't even remember that he's in that. But yeah, I think he's probably easily best known for playing Newman. But yeah, Wayne Knight, man, Newman is such an iconic character that he brought to life. All right. Let's see. Next up, where are we at? We got Andrew who sends in a $20 tip. Thank you so much, Andrew, who writes, I just finished watching Supernatural for the first time. Nice. And I owe you a huge thank you. I heard you say on the show how much you liked it, and so I went and checked it out, and now it's one of my favorite shows. What did you think of the finale? I loved it. Okay, so yes, I loved Supernatural. I loved that show. I'm not going to say it's one of the greatest shows ever, but I loved watching it. I was faithfully watching it for all 15 seasons, all that kind of stuff. I have kind of mixed feelings on the finale. Like, in one sense, it was beautifully done. Like the whole thing about Sam living out his life, getting married, having his own son, and then getting to grow old. His son becomes a hunter as well, and he gets to grow old. And then when he finally passes away, he sees Dean again. And, you know, then you have all these characters from the show. I mean, it was really, really beautifully done. It was. That said, the smarter thing to do would have, I think, even though it was very beautiful, it was a beautiful ending. I'm not knocking them for it. They did a good job. Had they asked me, though, which surprisingly they didn't, go figure. But had they asked me, I think the smarter thing would have been to have the brothers walking off into the sunset together. You know, life goes on. The hunt continues, but, you know, it just bring it really to a nice conclusion and have them walk off into the sunset. Because I knew when I saw that finale that eventually they were going to have a problem. And now they are. Because I know for a fact that there are discussions going on about a supernatural revival. They tried to do the supernatural spin-off thing about the mom and dad, and that didn't work at all. They tried to do like the sisters spin-off thing. That didn't come to work. I can tell you for a fact that there are discussions going on about reviving Supernatural. But the finale of the show presents a very big problem. There's a definite finality to the show. Like a definite finality. You have the death of Dean. They literally then follow Sam for 60 more years. Of course, in the span of about 5 minutes, 60 more years, and he dies. Literally, the show ends with the two of them. They're 60 years in the future. Both the brothers are dead. They're now living in heaven and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Marcus Wise saying, time travel. I can just see Hulk saying that in Endgame. Time travel. Yeah. I mean, that's what they'll probably have to do. But I just remember when I saw the finale for the first time, I thought to myself, in an age that we're in television, when revivals of shows, whether it's Will and Grace, or whether it's Frasier, or whether it's X-Files, or whether it's whatever, it's all the rage to do show revivals. I said, I think this is kind of short-sighted to have this kind of an ending. I think you should have an ending that allows you the option and the opportunity to move forward. Oh my God. Gray Fox just came up with the best title for it. Supernatural Born Again. What a great title for Supernatural that would be. Now, it's a little bit borrowing from Daredevil Born Again, of course, but Supernatural Born Again, perfect title for something like that. So I don't know. We'll see what they do with that, but I love the show. I'm glad you discovered it. It's got such a special place in my heart. And now whenever I hear, carry on my wayward son, like all I think about is Supernatural, right? Which is unfortunate because that's one of the great rock songs of all time. But now I cannot hear that. To me, that's not a song. That is the theme to Supernatural. That's the unofficial theme to Supernatural. There'll be peace when you are done. By the way, Bruce Lum very correctly pointed out that was the song. The band that did the song is Kansas. I actually, for a summer, played in a little band with the former drummer of Kansas. True story. True story. Anyway, next up, TAC writes. The Robotech movie took so long in development hell because the rights issues between the Japanese and US rights holders to the first third of the series, Macross. Each saga had its own series in Japan. They have been resolved. Hawkeye director is attached. Listen, the thing is, there have been a couple of times that they said rights issues have been resolved. Having a director, and this is something that a lot of movie fans need to understand, having a director or an actor or a writer or a producer or whatever attached means nothing. Robotech had a producer attached literally 15 years ago. The problem with Robotech, and I would love to see a Robotech movie. Let's be very clear. I would love to see it. But the problem with Robotech is it will be, in technical terms, a fucking ludicrously expensive movie to make. It's going to be ridiculously expensive. Like crazy expensive. Think Pacific Rim times 20. I'm not saying it would be a $700 million to make. No, but it will be one of the most expensive to do it right. And I just don't know that Robotech, it doesn't have the nostalgia value that a Transformers has. It'll be a challenge. It'll be a challenge. So I personally would love to see it. I hope it gets done. But yeah, just because somebody's attached, that doesn't mean anything. Thousands of movies every year get directors or writers or actors attached that never see the light of day. It's not greenlit, and I have a feeling it probably won't get greenlit. I hope it does, though. I really hope it does. I'll be very excited if it finally happens, Tack. All right. The Tick writes, the Godzilla Kong fight in Egypt was going to play out differently. Godzilla was going to win, and when he was about to land the killing blast, Kong roars, save Mothra. I've heard that joke before, Tick. Save Mothra. Actually, wasn't it? Didn't Rob come up with that joke on the show like 6 months ago? There you go. All right. Steve Brown M writes, hey, John, did you watch the film The Goat Life? Is that the Indian film? I want to say that's out of India, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the movie out of India. Anyway, did you watch the film The Goat Life? No, haven't seen it at all. I'm surprised I've even heard of it, if it's the movie I'm thinking of. It has one of the best performances by an actor in this century. I think he deserves the Oscar for Best Actor. Again, I know nothing about it. I might not even be thinking of the right movie. I think it's the film out of India. I think that's the one you're talking about. But other than that, I haven't even seen a trailer. I haven't seen the movie, so I have no commentary to make on that. But if you liked it that much, I will keep my eyes open. All right. Thanks for that, Stephen, for putting that on the radar for everybody. All right. Jai CSC writes, hey, John, can I double check something about North American cinemas? From the listed start time of a movie, are cinemas stupidly showing 20 to 30 minutes of trailers only? Or is it like us in the UK where we have ads and trailers shown for 30 minutes before it starts? Okay, so here's what they do in the US, and it's completely fucking brutally stupid. When they advertise a movie starts at 7 p.m., the movie does not start at 7 p.m. That's when the trailers and the commercials start. When the listing, like I can go onto my AMC A-List app here. Let me see if I can bring this up. All right. If I bring up a movie on my, why can't I get this to close? Okay, here we go. Like I bring up a movie, right? And it says, like for instance, I got tickets for Monkey Man. It says April 4th. That's Thursday. At 5 p.m. Yay! So you would think that if I go to the theater and I sit down at 5 p.m., a movie's going to start. Nope. Despite the fact that, now I have A-List, so I pay like $25 a month for A-List, but let's say I didn't have A-List. Despite the fact that I just spent $15 to go in and watch a movie, I paid to be there. They feel they have the right to subject me to like 25 to 30 minutes of commercials and trailers before they start the movie. There are few things in the movie-going experience in North America that I hate as much. As this practice. It should absolutely be illegal. I have no problem watching a free YouTube video and ads being in the YouTube video. You know why? Because I'm getting the YouTube video for free. I didn't have to put my credit card into YouTube, say, great, you want to watch this video? insert your credit card and pay $7 to watch it. That didn't happen. I get to watch the YouTube video for free. So, since I didn't pay to watch this specific video, I have no problem if a commercial runs or an ad runs because, I'm watching for free. But if every time I loaded up a YouTube video, it said to watch this video, I got to pay $7, you better fucking not put commercials in it. You better not put commercials in it. If you want to open up the movie theaters and say the movie theaters are free, you just got to sit through commercials and trailers to watch the movie. Fair, no problem. But if we're paying you $15 to sit down and just watch a movie, you've got no fucking right to subject us to 20, 25, 30, sometimes 35 minutes of commercials and trailers. Fuck you. I paid to be in here. I paid to be here. Paid good money to be here. Now, I have no problem if it says the movie starts at 5 and at 4:30 you start playing commercials and trailers. That's fine because you didn't tell me the movie started till 5, start the movie at 5. I think they should pass a law where you can say showtime starts at 7, but then you should be required by law to put in what time the actual movie starts to. Showtime is 7, movie begins at 7:25. I think that should be a frickin' law. That should be a freaking law. Gray Fox saying get a home theater, problem solved. Yeah, if you want to watch a movie in a pathetic, stupid, lowbrow kind of way, like in a way that filmmakers don't actually intend their movies to be seen. If you want to watch a movie with half the experience, sure, feel free. Watch it at home. Sit your ass down on the same couch you sit down on every single night by yourself and just watch a movie the same way. Take the event nature out of the film. Take the grander experience of movies out. Sure. If you want to do that, go nuts. Knock yourself out. And I say this as somebody who likes watching movies in my home theater as well. I do, but nothing is better than that. So if you want to go the half-ass thing and get half the experience and really cheap yourself out and not cheap with a P, but with a T, cheat yourself out and ruin half the experience for yourself, by all means, stay at home. But I just, it drives me nuts, man. It drives me nuts. If you say, and you know what they do? So here's what I started doing. And a lot of people started doing this. Well, we know they play like 25 minutes of trailers and commercials. So if it says the movie starts at 7, I'll show up at 7:20, right? Right? Seems to make sense. But the theater started to realize that some of us were catching up on that. They realized we were catching on to that. So you know what the theater started to do? They started to screw us. I first noticed this when I went to go see the last Indiana Jones movie. It had a 7 p.m. start time, so I aimed to be there at about 7:20. Because it always plays 25, 30 minutes of trailers and commercials. So I aimed to be there at 7:20. So I get there, I walk into the theater at 7:20. They had started the movie at 7:10. I missed, turns out not much, but I missed the first 10 minutes of the movie. So it was, and now I notice every once in a while, just to fuck with us, the movie theaters will start their movies like after 10 minutes of trailers. I mean, still usually 25 minutes of trailers, but every once in a while they're like, oh, you don't want to risk missing some of the movies. So you better show up at 7 because you never know if we just happen to start the movie earlier than you think we will. Fuck them. It's so frustrating. It is so frustrating. It really drives me crazy. Anyway, that's my rant on that. All right, guys, listen, that'll do it for all of the tip questions come in. We're now going to move over and start taking your live questions. But before we do, we're going to take a quick second here, guys, and thank the sponsor of today's video, my mobile service provider, and they should be yours, Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a moment and thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by overpriced wireless providers, if we've learned anything, is that there's always a catch. So when I heard that for a limited time, all Mint Mobile wireless plans are $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they sell wireless services online. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings on to you. And guys, you know, ever since I switched over to Mint Mobile, I am spending less than 1/3 on my wireless bills than I used to with one of the major carriers. So say goodbye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. So guys, to get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions may apply. See Mint Mobile for details. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile for sponsoring this episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's get over to your live questions here, shall we? We're going to get things started off here with, who are we starting off with? We're starting off with Future Millionaire, who's not on the screen. Give me 1 second to get this arranged properly. There's Future Millionaire. Okay. Future Millionaire writes, I thought that the movie was all right. Not going to lie. I'm now Team Kong. It's kind of hard to sympathize with a 400-foot iguana that only sleeps and kills. Well, now listen, Godzilla, he is the protector of the natural world. Like in these movies, he is the protector of the natural world. That's a big responsibility. And when there are threats to the natural world, particularly other kaiju, he needs to go into action, right? So I am definitely Team Kong. I am, but I love Godzilla too. Like you can love both of them. I lean towards Kong's my favorite, but I think Godzilla needs to be appreciated, my friends. I think Godzilla needs to be appreciated. All right. Next up, we got Brandon who writes, 1 week till Cinemacon. What's the plan, John? Well, yes, me, Anne, and Ray are going to Cinemacon this year. Very stoked about it. We leave on Sunday. We got Anne's birthday party on Saturday, and then Sunday we leave for Cinemacon. And we're going to be doing all of our videos from Las Vegas that week. Very, very excited about it. Cannot wait. I still don't know what the other screenings are. Like I know we're getting Fall Guy. I know we're getting Fall Guy, but I don't know what the other 2 or 3 screenings are. So very stoked to find out. Very excited. Can't wait to do our videos from there. It's always fun every year when we get to do our videos from Las Vegas. All right. Next up, Wayne Fernandez writes, any book / audiobook you're reading to or listening to right now? The audiobook I'm listening to right now, it's not a fiction book. It's called Atomic Habits. I read and listen to a lot of these books, like personal development book, leadership book, business management books, all that kind of stuff. I'm really into those kind of things right now. So the one I'm going through right now is called Atomic Habits. That's the one I'm going through right now. All right. Next up, we've got Tristan who writes, do y'all think other studios follow Warner Brothers in signing first look deals with actors? Warner Brothers is not signing first look deals with actors. They're signing first look deals with producers. Okay. But John, they just signed Timothée Chalamet. Yes, they signed a first look deal with Timothée Chalamet, the producer, right? As an actor, you don't have a first look deal because a first look deal is when you as a producer come with a movie idea. You have this movie idea, and the first look deal means you got to go to the studio with the option first to make that movie. Then if the studio turns you down, then you can go and shop it around to other studios. But yeah, it's not, I know it sounds like it's just semantics. It's not. It's a very important distinction. Actors do not sign first look deals. Producers do. And Timothée Chalamet with his own production shingle, and he is a producer. He, as the producer, Timothée Chalamet, the producer, signed the first look deal. So yes, that's just a key thing. to understand. All right, next up. Thanks for that, Tristan. Next up, we got John Redcorn, who writes, Good Times trailer felt like I was watching Soul Plane, full of unfunny black stereotypes we've all seen before, felt nothing like the OG show. You know, I remember we brought this up on the show the other day when Good Times came up. What I said at the time and what I still think is there are shows out of and around about that era that don't really exist exclusively in their time. Golden Girls is something you can do based in any year. I think Sanford and Son is something you could do based in almost any year. Good Times, though, is an iconic, legendary show, but it was very much a show of its time period. And I remember when I first heard they were going to do an animated series of Good Times, I just remember thinking, I don't know that that's going to work. I just don't know. And again, we'll have to wait and see when the show comes out. I don't even know if it did come out already. I don't think it's come out yet, but we'll have to see what happens when the show comes out. And maybe it'll be good. I don't know, but it seems like a weird idea. Like I said, I'd be more down for a Sanford and Son, Golden Girls, Different Strokes. But just Good Times was so of its era. It's such a 70s show that I don't know that you can divorce the era that show takes place in from the show itself. I don't know. I might be wrong about that. Hopefully they're able to make something good. All right, next up. CJ Rebirth writes, finally saw Greta Gerwig's Little Women. It's great. Love seeing Irulan and Paul Atreides together. Also love Godzilla x Kong Empire. Kong and Gia remind me of Boo and Sully. That's a very good comparison. That is a very good comparison. Boo and Sully. That is a good one too. You know, here's the interesting thing about Greta Gerwig. She's a wonderful filmmaker. Like absolutely wonderful. Her Little Women is great. Obviously her Barbie's great. But you know what the funny thing is? A lot of people think her best movie, and was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and I think she won an Academy Award for a screenplay for it, if I'm not mistaken, but is Lady Bird. The one she did with Saoirse Ronan. Lady Bird. People love that movie. Love that movie. And again, a lot of cinephiles think that is the definitive best Greta Gerwig movie is Lady Bird. I didn't like it. I did not like Lady Bird. I found it dull and dry, not particularly profound. The performances were great. Obviously they were, but it's just really weird for me. Like she's such a great filmmaker, and the movie that most people think is her best is the one she's got that I didn't like very much. Again, love Little Women, love Barbie. She's a phenomenal filmmaker, but that's just the one that I didn't really like all that much, and everybody else loves it. All right. Next up, Kevin Fraser writes, John, would you now say that Easter is the hot new release date for movies? No, not at all. Or was the Godzilla marketing effort the reason for the box office? No. Just because a movie comes out and it's a big hit, you can't say, well, that's because of the release date. I mean, listen, if they released Godzilla last week, it still would have made close to $80 million. If they released Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire this week, it still would have made about $45 million. I don't really think the date has anything to do with it. Like Christmas Day does. Christmas Day is the number one movie going day of the year. I know that's weird, but it's a statistical fact. There are times that are big, but I don't think that just because Godzilla versus Kong did big when it came out, that the industry is going to look at it and say that must have to do with the date that it came out. I don't think so. I could totally understand the question. I'm just saying, yeah, I don't think people are going to look at it that. Listen, when holidays are always good. Holidays are good for movies. That's a mathematical fact. But I don't think that just because Godzilla versus Kong did great, it's going to be looked at as the new hot release date. Not necessarily. All right. Next up, Juan Benitez sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Juan, so much for supporting us on that level, man. I appreciate that, dude. And Juan writes, after watching film reactions, I respect the difficulty in making a film that makes sense. Some reactors will say that parts didn't make sense and need explaining, and others will say that the same movie explained things too much. Dude, it's not about reactions. That's people in general. You've got to understand that this is why whenever I talk about movies, I say, listen, making a good movie, too many fans act like making a good movie is easy. It's like, wow, how did they screw that up? Some filmmakers screw films up because it's remarkably hard to make a good movie. It is inexplicably difficult to make a good movie. It is Herculean in nature to make a great movie. And the subjectivity of film adds to the complexity of it, because it's not just reactors. Like, you can have some audience members hear a joke in a movie and go, that wasn't very funny. And then the other half of the audience heard the same joke and laughed their asses off. Some people can think a villain was a good villain, and other people won't think it's a good villain. Halo. Some people watch Halo and don't like it. Some people watch Halo and really like it. I mean, it's not just reactors and just talking about whether something makes sense. I mean, it's like the totality of the art, because it is so subjective. It's difficult, man. It's really, really hard. And anything that helps us appreciate just how difficult of a job is for filmmakers to make movies good, that appeal to a lot of people when we all have such wildly different tastes, that's a special, special thing, and why we need to really appreciate it when even just a good movie comes out. Like, when a movie comes out that's even just good, we should really appreciate that, because that is a tough thing to do, man. It's really, really tough. All right. Next up. Thanks for that one. And again, thank you for supporting us on that level, dude. Alex Von Gollum writes, one of two. John, I'm still scared from watching Godzilla King of the Monsters. The dialogue was so atrocious. I hope somebody would shout Dracarys, a little Game of Thrones in there, to Ghidorah, get rid of the humans. I'm going to give the new movie a try. I don't expect Shakespeare writing, just some decent / passable. Well, Alex, I got good news and bad news for you. The good news is that Godzilla X Kong is significantly better than Godzilla King of the Monsters. Significantly better. The bad news is it's not much of an improvement in terms of good dialogue or good narrative or good depth developing. It's not. What it does is it does a really great job on the things it does well. The fun, the action, the giant kaiju battles, like all that stuff, which is 90% of the reason the people are going to see the movie are going to see the movie. The stuff it does well, it does exceptionally well. The stuff it doesn't do so good, it really doesn't do so good. So right about at Godzilla King of the Monsters level. But the action, the fun, the adventure of it is a lot better than it is in Godzilla King of the Monsters. So I think you'll have a good time if you go and give it a shot. Just prepare yourself that the dialogue is still going to be pretty rough. All right, next up. Our friend Murray Reich writes in, saw the latest Ghostbusters and overall it was okay. I felt there were too many characters. Finn Wolfhard character had nothing to do. That's true. Jokes were hit and miss. So many exposition dumps. Last one was way better. Listen, man, Ghostbusters, what was it called? Ghostbusters Afterlife was the last one. Such a good movie. Really good, solid, best of the Ghostbusters films that we've had since the original Ghostbusters. It was pleasantly surprising. I wasn't expecting it to be that good, and it was so wonderful. And I knew we could be in for trouble when we found out that Jason Reitman wasn't going to direct this one, because he directed the last one, and he's like one of our best directors today. I knew we might be in for trouble when he wasn't going to direct it. And yeah, listen, the first 2 acts of the film, none of the jokes worked for me. The over-reliance on nostalgia. Nostalgia can be a very good thing, but nostalgia is like any other tool in a filmmaker's belt. You can use it well and you can use it badly. And they use nostalgia badly, quite frankly. The last act of the film saved it for me. It saved the movie for me, the last act. Jokes started to land better. Nostalgia started to be used a little better. It became a little bit more fun, but yeah, man, I 100% agree with you, Murray. It is clearly inferior, in my opinion. It's clearly the lesser compared to Afterlife, which I thought was the much better movie. All right. Thanks for that, Murray. Next up, Daddy Logan writes, do you think the MCU will reboot after Secret Wars? No. Eventually they will, but I don't think they're going to do it after Secret Wars. Kevins sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Kevins. Appreciate that, man. Hey, John, Godzilla X Kong has not opened here yet where I live. I live in Lebanon. Nice. Middle East. And I'm so excited to see it next week. Suplex City, baby. Yep. You're getting your, listen, I never knew that what I really needed in my life was a kaiju suplexing another kaiju. I didn't know that. I didn't know I needed it. And now that I have it in my heart, now that I have it as a part of me, I can't imagine living in a world where we don't have a giant kaiju suplexing another giant kaiju. I don't want to live in that world that doesn't have that anymore. It's now a big part of my life. You're in for a ball. Again, if you're the type of person that, and listen, a lot of people go to the movies that the primary thing you're looking for is solid story, good narrative, great development, all that kind of stuff, and action and all that kind of stuff is secondary, you might not like this movie. But if you're just going in to have, see some giant monsters in a really fun way, punching the crap out of each other, I think you might be in for a good time. All right. Thanks so much, Kevins, for supporting us on that level again, man. I appreciate it, man. All right. UFC Common Trader writes, not commentator, Common Trader, writes, love the show, John. Thank you so much. Excited about the new season of Foundation. Very underrated show. Dude, I love Foundation. And I didn't think it looked very good when it was first coming around. And I didn't know, how do you turn that story into a TV show? They've done a great job with it. And the guy who plays Ronan the Accuser, why am I freezing on the actor's name? Guys in the live chat, what's the actor's name who plays Ronan the Accuser? And he plays Empire in Foundation. Help me out here. What's his name again? Lee Pace. Thank you. M. Joseph was the first one to get that out to me. Lee Pace is so good in this show. So good. Again, I don't put it up there with Shogun or Last of Us or House of the Dragon. That's the elite of the elite right now in television as far as I'm concerned. But Foundation is really good. And I'm very excited to see a third season. I thought the second season was really sharp. All right. Next up, we got Mr. Godzilla writes, hey, John, I noted on today's show what films upcoming will give competition for Godzilla X Kong. I think the first real competition will be Fall Guy, but that's the first movie to go for Godzilla X Kong's audience will be apes. I mean, but Fall Guy's not really competition for it because Fall Guy doesn't open for a few weeks. I mean, that's weeks away. So it's going to do pretty well. It's going to have a pretty clear runway. So actually, let me look this up. Let me open up the calendar here and see what's coming up. So if I go, oh yeah, we're in April now. Oh my goodness. So we've got, the first Omen is opening this week. Monkey Man is opening this week. I'm really excited for Monkey Man, even though it's not going to make a lot of money at the box office, and that's fine. What else we got? On April 12th, that's the following week. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead reboot. That's not going to do a lot, although I am curious to see it. Civil War opens. Again, that might be one of the best films of the year, but I don't think it's going to do super good at the box office. Then we go to April 19th, and we've got The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, but that's like 3 weeks out. Abigail, I'm really excited to see Abigail, about the little vampire girl. I think that movie's going to be a blast. I cannot wait to see that. Dan Stevens, Giancarlo Esposito. I think that's got a lot of fun that it can have. Then we go to April 24th, April 26th, Challengers, the Zendaya movie comes out. What else do we got? Yeah, I mean, literally, there's a few things in there. So I think what's going to kill Godzilla's run at the box office is not going to be its competition. It's just going to be time, right? Because more and more audiences go to see a movie in its first 2 to 3 weeks. Audience behavior, viewing behavior didn't used to be like that. Like back when I was a kid, a movie could play for months in theaters. Like it was really drawn out. Like when a movie came out, you had a lot of time to go and see. But more and more audience behavior is like the majority of people are going to see a movie seen in its first 2 to 3 weeks. And that's what ultimately is going to hurt Godzilla v Kong or Godzilla X Kong is going to be time, not so much the competition that's coming out against it. All right. Next up, Future Millionaire writes, hey, John, do you know why Legendary went with Apple instead of Warner Brothers for their show Monarch? No, but went back with Warner Brothers for the film. Missed opportunity for Max. No, there could be 100 different reasons why. Really could be 100 different reasons. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter as long as we get the show. And listen, it could be that, Apple may have already had the rights to the story before. It may have been a pitch from Apple. It could have been financing. It could have been, there's a lot of different variables that go into it. So there could be a lot of different reasons. And Warner Brothers, was it a missed opportunity? Did a lot of people watch Monarch? I'm not sure if they did, but I think it ended up being a win for Apple. I thought the show was really wonderful. But again, why it didn't happen with Warner Brothers could be one of 100 different variables. At the end of the day, again, it's not very important, but it could be one of 100 different variables for sure. All right. Thanks for the question, Future Millionaire. Next up, Tim writes, John Sama, another episode of Shogun tonight. Yes, it is. And the thing that sucks is I'm not allowed to watch it without Anne. And Anne is going out for an early birthday night with her girls. Anne's got several circles of friends. One of her lifelong circle of friends is her Filipino girls. And they're all going out tonight to celebrate Anne's birthday a little bit early. So I got to wait until Anne gets home, which means, and she's not getting home till like 10:30 or 11, which means I'm going to have to, even though I got to get up at 6 tomorrow, I'm going to have to stay up till about midnight, 12:30 tonight. But I'm going to watch it tonight. I ain't waiting. I am watching it tonight. And I do appreciate it that you guys won't tell on me if I want to watch it without her, but I can't watch it without her. I got to watch it with her. I got to wait for her to get home. All right. Next up, John McKinney writes, have you seen Quiet on the Set? No. Growing up in the 1990s and early 2000s, I watched Disney Channel, Cartoon Network, and Fox Kids more than Nick. That being said, it made me queasy. Dan Schneider is a creep. No, I haven't seen it. When growing up in Canada, unless I'm mistaken, but growing up in Canada, we never had Nickelodeon. Like a lot of these shows that my American friends like grew up watching and as a part of their childhood, that was never a part of my experience. We didn't have Nickelodeon where I was. And so these are all like people I don't know, talking about shows and actors that I've never seen or heard for. So there's no real connection to me on that. So I have not seen it. It sounds like it's really good, but yeah, I haven't seen it. Don't really plan on watching it, I don't think, but yeah, I haven't seen it myself. All right, next up, we've got Stargirl who writes, Renegade Nell on Disney is fantastic. I've never heard of it. I binged it, written by the great Sally Wainwright. Can't recommend it enough. I honestly can tell you, Stargirl, I've never even heard of it. I have no idea what it is. Does anybody have any idea what this thing is? But I don't. But now that you've put it on my radar, Stargirl, if I stumble across it, now I'll recognize it. So we'll see. All right. Next up, Logan Vaughn writes, in the new X-Men, do you think Rogue will actually have cool powers like in the animated show, or will she just be cursed like the 2000 movies? There are different Rogue origin stories in the comics. They've handled Rogue differently in different runs. The classic Rogue, though, is that she gets her hands on Captain Marvel and gets Captain Marvel's, or a lot of Captain Marvel's powers. Flight, invulnerability, strength, all that kind of stuff. She's kind of, that way. Will they do that with her in the new MCU? Will they have Rogue get her hands on Captain Marvel and get her powers that way? Or I do think we're going to see the power set that most people know Rogue for having. I do think that. Now, whether or not they do it, consistently with that one storybook run of her character where she gets her powers from Captain Marvel, or whether they find some other way for her to get her, or that those are just her mutant powers. They might just say that Rogue is born with the absorption power and with all the other powers she has. They might do that, or they'll figure out a way to do it. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All right. But I do think they're going to have her have those powers, Logan. I do think. I just don't know how they're going to explain her having it yet. All right. John Redcorn writes, what was the dumber spider people living in the Amazon? Okay. What was dumber, the spider people living in the Amazons in Madam Web, or the telepathic mutes living in Hollow Earth in Godzilla X Kong? I'll be honest with you. of all the dumb things in Godzilla X Kong, that tribe of people living in Hollow Earth is not necessarily one of them. I mean, they did some pretty inexplicable things that made no sense with those characters down there, but the whole notion that they're down there isn't actually that bad. The whole Amazon tribes who all have the Spider-Man powers, and like that was just so utterly ridiculous. That was just so utterly ridiculous. And really, like, she finds the exact spot in the jungle based on a picture she saw of a tree. I want you to think about that for a second. She was able to travel to another country and find the exact spot in the jungle from a picture of a tree. And that spider guy knew to be there at that moment. Unless he's just been hanging out there for 30 years. I mean, yeah, man. Yeah, it's pretty damn bad. Just pretty damn bad. All right. Crazy Description writes, John, based on the last two movies, would you prefer a new director take over the next Godzilla Kong sequel or have Wingard return? I'll be honest with you. Like, normally, I think new directors should come in after a bit, after one or two films. I think it's good for the franchise. I think it's good for a director to move on. Normally, I would think that. But the kind of movies that Godzilla and Kong are, I'd be totally comfortable with Wingard coming back. As a matter of fact, Wingard has said he's already got his idea for the next film. And with an opening weekend of $80 million, you bet your ass they're going to be announcing they're going to greenlight the next one real fast. So, and Wingard already says he's got his idea. So yeah, I'm down for it. Look, I'd also be open to a new director just because it's always good to bring in fresh blood to add something different to it. But the kind of movies these are, I'm totally good with Wingard coming back. All right. Next up, Suthius writes, I swear the 4 Godzilla movies and the 4 Schumacher Batman movies are the same. First movie, very good. Second movie, could have been better. Third movie, well, this is new. Fourth movie, oh, so many shiny things. I don't know if I agree with that comparison, Suthius, to be honest with you. At all. First of all, because I don't think the first Godzilla, if you're talking about the 2014 Godzilla, I don't think that was a very good movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked it, but I don't think it was all that good. And I don't know if they progress the same way that the Schumacher Batman movie, but still, it's a very creative way of looking at it. It's a very, very creative way of looking at it. I can respect that. All right. Next up. Thanks for that, Suthius. We got our final question of the day that comes to us from Alex Von Gollum, which is good because we've already gone over 2 hours tonight. Charlotte Rampling as the Reverend Mother has been consistently great in the 2 Dune movies, 100%. Her acting is enrapturing, her delivery of lines masterful. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. Because whenever we talk about Dune, we talk about the incredible performance, and rightfully so, of Timothée Chalamet. The Oscar-level performance of Javier Bardem. Rebecca Ferguson being amazing in it. You know, we talk a lot about performance, and I think I have been as guilty as everybody else by not also bringing up Charlotte Rampling and just how good she is in this. Like her lines, her scenes with Florence Pugh are so good. Like so good. And you go back to the first movie, like she only has a number of scenes, like I think 4 or 5 scenes in the first movie, but every one of them, she completely knocks it out of the park. And she is one of the reasons these movies work so well. Smaller part, yes, but important part nonetheless. And I'm glad you brought that up, Alex, because not enough of us bring it up, including me, of how good she is. And we really should bring up when we're talking about how great Dune is and how great the performance is, she absolutely should have her name mentioned there too. And I'm glad you brought that up. And all right, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of Open Mic. You can probably tell my voice is starting to go. Thank you so much. I've done over 3.5 hours of live streaming today. Thank you so much for being here and making this little show a part of your day. I appreciate you guys being here so much. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in questions, whether by using the super chat feature because you're here live or by using our tip link. And once again, if you want to send in a topic or question for the next open mic, go ahead, send it in anytime. The link is down in the description below. Get it at streamelements.com/JohnCampea/tip. You can send it in that way. And just a big thank you to all you guys who send in those questions because number one, you give us fun things to talk about, but number two, you actually support our channel because, we're not, YouTube isn't a place where you pay $5 to watch every video. So you help us keep the lights on and doing what we do. So thank you guys so much for that support. Don't forget to come on back and join us for the John Campea Show tomorrow. We're looking forward to it. Can't wait to see you guys again. In the meantime, my name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.